What's going on, fellas? This is questions number 50. If you have any questions you would like answered from me, you are welcome to subscribe to my Patreon. It's $5 a month, 100% chance to get the question answered, as well as access to any programs that I put on there, no additional charge. If I think it's a question that other people might benefit from, I'll probably answer it one of these, post it publicly on the YouTube so everybody can watch it. If I think it's very specific to you, I'll probably just answer you directly on there, but that's what we're doing. So getting straight into the questions, the first one, do you have any tips for falling asleep? I've been trying to dial in the common advice like a dark, cold room, set sleep schedule, etc., but I still struggle to fall asleep regularly and it messes with my training. Well, I'm assuming you might know, if you're on the Patreon, you might follow me a little bit. I struggle with my sleep. I've struggled with my sleep my whole life. Thus, I've put a lot of effort into getting better at it, right? So you mentioned the basics, right? So you can watch a whole lot of videos on YouTube where people detail basic sleep hygiene, whether it be Stan Efferding or actual sleep specialists kind of talking about the importance of a set schedule, making sure that you are in a dark room. If you can get blackout blinds up and that's practical for you, awesome. If you cannot, then you can just get accustomed to sleeping with a sleep mask on. That works just as well. That is what I do and have had totally fine success with. At first, it was a little uncomfortable to fall off during the night, but I got used to it with time, and that's been a quality increase. A cold room, if your house does not have air conditioning, you can sleep in front of a fan, and if you have the money to do so, you can also save up and buy a portable air conditioning unit. You just plug it into the wall. It basically has a hose that runs out your window, and you can get your room down to about 60 degrees. So you can control this. Making sure that those two are a universal, kind of a basic start. The other thing that you mentioned there is a consistent sleep schedule. So going to bed and waking up at the same times, even on weekends, can be extremely helpful. And when you said the basics, I assume you also mean putting away your phone, not looking at a screen, let's say hour, 45 minutes within the time you're going to sleep. These are the basics. If you're still struggling, first of all, I would encourage you to really be critical of yourself and say, how consistent am I with these basics? But if you are being consistent with them and you're still struggling, one thing that I have found very helpful myself is to think of falling asleep as a skill. Just like any other skill, there are some people who have kind of a genetic propensity towards it and have a very easy time with it, and some people who have a harder time than usual with it. I would probably fall into that camp. You would probably fall into that camp, but that's not to say that the skill cannot be trained. So just basic, not just lying there and expecting yourself to fall asleep, but paying attention to maybe habits and patterns that you can take advantage of to expedite that time. So maybe slowing down your breathing so that your heart rate comes down. Meditative practices like trying to push thoughts about the next day out of your head. One of the things that I found very helpful was to watch like a lot of those like guided falling asleep videos while falling asleep, where even if they didn't work, I could kind of take notice of what like the sleeping cues, if you will, that had some positive effect, and then kind of making mental note, hey, this works for me. I'm going to be cognizant about doing this in the future and cultivating your own specific sleep process. I'm guessing it varies from person to person. I can tell you that in my own experience, trying to picture something in extreme detail in my head kind of allows my mind to wander aimlessly. And as my mind begins to wander, I kind of get closer to that sleep state, trying to push any like actual coherent thoughts out of my head, making sure that my breathing is slow and steady, making sure it's a dark room, it's a cold room, it's the same time I usually go to bed, so on and so forth. All of these things have helped me a good deal, although the specific cues that you might take advantage of might be totally different than mine. I have no idea. I've never fallen asleep as someone else. So the second question is pretty directly related to this one. It was adding on to the previous question. You talked a bit ago on sleep in your 3 pillars of strength training video. I do recommend that you guys watch that. I think it's called the 3 pillars of strength training. I think that was an okay video earlier on in my YouTube. Maybe I didn't articulate my ideas as well, but I think there's some good stuff there. I mentioned sleep as one of the 3 major pillars. And you mentioned some supplements that help with your sleep. Could you go into more detail on your sleep routine? I've been cracking down on my sleep routine, but still have some trouble and I'm thinking of trying some supplements to help. So we don't want to over rely on supplements over those basics that we just went over, but if we're really someone who struggles with it, we're going to try to take advantage of every avenue that we have to get better at sleeping. So I've tried a whole lot of different sleeping supplements. I've had some luck with some of those comprehensive, like pre-formulated ones that have, I want to say the Subject Zero one. I don't even know if Subject Zero is still in business, but they were a great company that had like 100% clinically dosed and evidence-supported ingredients within their sleep supplement. I'm sure there's other ones out there. That kind of takes the research away from you, although it might include some ingredients you don't want to that lead to you feeling groggy the next day. But I've had some luck with those as just kind of the shotgun approach of, hey, everything that's got some research behind it, I have a scoop of this before bed. That way I don't have to think about it myself. The downside being maybe there's something in there that leaves you feeling pretty groggy. The other problem is that it's more expensive. I am poor. So I tried to distill it down to the things that I found made a noticeable difference. The first one was supplementing magnesium. I supplement ZMA. ZMA has kind of been debunked as a supplement. It's just zinc, magnesium, and B complex, I believe. Each of these things individually is great. The ZMA being debunked is just saying that these things together don't really have a synergistic effect as they maybe have been marketed to, but supplementing zinc and magnesium and B complex is totally fine. May as well buy them together. It's not any more expensive really. So I just have ZMA from the Optimum Nutrition brand because they're solid, good price point, trusted. I trust that the dosages are what they say they are, but you can get that from regular magnesium supplements. You probably want to do a little bit of research on where that magnesium is coming from. Maybe magnesium glycinate might be, glycinate or citrate will probably be your best bet because they're the least likely to upset your stomach, as other carriers of magnesium are actually used as laxatives. So worth being aware of, but supplementing ZMA specifically worked great for me. I noticed that it doesn't help with my sleep latency, so it doesn't speed up falling asleep, but the quality of sleep increases. And then as far as falling asleep, I highly recommend GABA, G-A-B-A. I think Now Sports on Amazon has a good deal on it. They're pretty reputable as far as their dosaging. This I've found, I think if I take, I want to say 1.5 grams, has greatly improved my sleep latency. If I have horrible habits in terms of, oh, I'm not going to bed when I usually go to bed, I was just looking at a screen, so on and so forth, it's not enough to overcome that. But if I've done everything right and then I add in GABA, it does really help with my consistency of falling asleep. That's been a real game changer for me. I've tried loads of other ones with mixed results, but those are the ones that I would not, if I ran out, I would go get on my computer and order them immediately. I will continue messing around with it. I'll let you guys know if I find any others that I yield good results from. I know that Dante Trudell, the supplement wizard himself, was talking about some potential benefits to highly dosed melatonin, and that the recommended 5 milligrams is not actually really based in much science at all. How there are clinical populations who use highly dosed melatonin, and maybe it's got some anti-cancer properties. I've also seen some very well-educated people say maybe we should push back on that because there's a mechanism through which that might impair hypertrophy. So I wouldn't necessarily hang my hat on highly dosed melatonin. That was something I was messing around with for a little bit, but I would definitely say that the two that I've had the most success with are the ZMA and the GABA when paired with the sleep routine that I kind of detailed earlier. And then the last one we have for the day is opinion on AMRAP sets at 1 RIR. So 1 rep in reserve. So as many reps as possible, leaving 1 in the tank. I saw a bunch of people on a crusade on Instagram like last year saying, oh, our AMRAP at RPE9, this is the stupidest way of notating this ever. Did you not know what an AMRAP is? It's a basic parameter. It's as many reps as possible at RPE9. That sentence makes complete sense. Do not nitpick that. My own personal grievances about people complaining about that aside, I think that's a great notation. I think AMRAP at 1 RIR or RPE9, that's a great way to write that. How do I feel about that for progressing maxes block to block? So for example, AMRAP at 75% after doing sets of 8 at 70% for 3 weeks, step loading. If you get 10 reps, your max for the next week goes up by 5 pounds. Okay, so you increase your entered 1RM. If you get 12 or more reps, you go up 10 pounds to your entered 1RM. This was an effective way to gauge progression when I was starting out, and I was wondering if it would be an effective gauge of progression block to block instead of a rep max, like a set of 8 at 0 RIR. Okay, so that specific progression scheme you detailed, if it's just a progression scheme, progression schemes are specific to the individual. If that works for you, awesome, cool. It might work for other people, awesome, cool. But getting at the real point of what you're saying is, hey, can we use an AMRAP capped at a certain number of reps in reserve as our proxy for measuring whether we're moving forward, right? So one of the simplest way to measure whether we're moving forward is to test a 1RM. Testing a 1RM frequently does not lend itself to good training. So how can we make sure we're going in the right direction? Rep PRs are a good means of doing so. Calculating a estimated 1 rep max off of rep PRs, also another way to make sure that with time we are trending forward. So that way, if we're running a 10-week training cycle, we don't have to wait till week 10 to kind of get a feel for whether we are moving forward. We can assess at some level on a more frequent basis. Some people believe in only assessing every 10 weeks and adjusting from there. Some people believe in testing on some level every week. Can we use an AMRAP at a certain RIR to gauge progression? Yeah, as long as we're sticking to that RIR pretty accurately. We can even factor that into an estimated 1RM. This is something that Mike Tusherer will use is, let's say we hit a set of 5 at RPE 8. RPE 8 would imply that we had 2 reps in reserve. So if we enter a set of 7 into a 1 rep max calculator as what we were capable of on that day, if our RPE was accurate, then we can gauge whether we're getting this gradual forward progression in our estimated 1RM. So yes, it can absolutely be used as an assessment tool. It does not have to be a true 0 RIR AMRAP to be used as an assessment tool. If we're accurate with our reps in reserve, we can factor that in to a 1RM estimation to kind of gauge whether we're moving forward. That would be my best shot at an answer. If I didn't understand the gist of the question, please let me know. I will either go into more detail on the following one, or I'll shoot you a message on there, just depending on what you say. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you boys as always.